Hello, everyone. It's Doug Rogers. It's October 20th.
This is Russell Rogers. We're the Rogers team from Keller Williams Southlake. Today we're going to have an episode called Let's Make a Deal. So, Doug, I've been reluctant to have us actually talk about this. I feel like our process is superior and we're kind of letting people peek behind the curtain, or door number one, maybe we'll say. But we're going to give them 10 different topics, 10 different action items here into how to grab a deal in this market. Now, this is only for outlying areas. Go watch the last episode. We talked about how kind of the inner economic areas are still pretty fast selling right now. But for a little bit, just to take a step outside of that, you're looking at Flower Mound, maybe Alliance area, those kind of markets. This is what you're going to be looking at, and these are the 10 ways to grab a deal. So, Doug, take us away with number one.
Okay, well, let's start with behind door number one. First place to always look is days on the market. You might even step it back and say, if we're really looking for a deal, let's look at the houses that are on market 90 days or longer. Then step it back 60 to 90 days, then 30 to 60 days. Then if we do look at houses that have just come on the market, we want to be really cautious about giving them a little time to see if they're going to sell quickly. And if not, we'll talk about how finding that information can be key going forward.
That brings us to number two, which is price reductions. They're not all created equal. If they've only gone down like $100 or something like that, they're really just trying to trigger a notification in the system, get that extra ping in Zillow, get that extra star in MLS, whatever the case is. But if they start at 400 and they've stepped their way down several times to 350, 375 or whatever the case is, and it's had those days on market and they've gone down and they've gone down and they've gone down, that's another clear sign that they are getting desperate.
Well, let's add these three together. Behind door number one, it's been on the market a while. Door number two, they've reduced the price 3 or 4 different times. Now, number 3 is it's vacant. No one likes making a payment on 2 places. So we can see things in our system like in the appointment process. If I go in the appointment process and it says show in any time or go and show, it's telling me right away it's vacant. So I know it's vacant. It may have furniture in the photos and lots of pretty plants and all staged, but they've already moved out. They were there when they listed the house, but 60 to 90 days in, they've moved out and they're making payments on 2 locations, and they've reduced the price multiple times, and now it's vacant and they're making 2 payments. That's time to look a little closer and see if we can get a deal.
Sometimes you can't even tell if it's vacant until you get there, and you're either going to see moving boxes, like a ton of them, like they've basically packed everything, or to your point where they started occupied and now they're vacant. You can always look in the closets, and if there's like no clothes left, that's another sure sign that they're probably vacant at this point. They've already moved on, and now they're getting even more desperate.
One other little trick about looking at the clothes: when you walk into the master bedroom closet, if half the closet is empty, there's something going on there. Either one's already moved out and waiting for the house to sell, they've already moved to the new location, or there's something else going on if half the clothes are gone. Now, the next fun kind of thing to watch are the comments made by the realtor in the advertising and in the remarks section.
Yeah, and this is something we've talked about. We never say this because I think it's grounds for a lawsuit if the seller doesn't explicitly tell you this, is that if in the description it says motivated seller, I don't think there's any item that's more of a sign of desperation than if the description itself in MLS says motivated seller.
Well, that's never a good idea. You want to negotiate from strength if you're the seller, but if you're really, really desperate and you put into writing with your agent, I want you to say I'm highly motivated, well, you better also as a seller be prepared to get a low offer because it's coming. Now, something else to watch in the remarks section that you can't see but you should be told about are realtor bonuses. We all expect to be paid a commission of some sort, and every now and then there's commissions that are above and beyond the norm. And if that's taking place, that's a sign of a motivated seller.
Realtor bonuses are kind of strange too, right? Because we have kind of a set percentage on commission for each side, seller and buyer, for the realtors. And so when you see those realtor bonuses, it really is kind of a clear indication that something is strange about this house, whether it's really ugly and they can't sell it, or they're getting extremely desperate, which is kind of both the same thing. But typically we're not looking at those commission rates, but when we see that realtor bonus, it's basically a red flag.
I agree. But occasionally you'll also see a builder who's got 10 houses on the ground that are all complete and they're gathering dust and they're vacant and they've been on the market 90 days. So all those things start to add up, and that's when you start saying, I got a note the other day, I get a trip to Cabo if I sell a house in this particular neighborhood. But let's talk a little bit about, we've found the house, we've narrowed it down, we've kind of looked at all the factors that are narrowing it down to the process of where we think we can get a deal. Here's a couple of tricks to the trade that inexperienced or incompetent agents might make. If we see this house on Saturday or Sunday, and it's the house that we really want to dig deep into, the first thing we do is nothing. We wait a day or two. We wait till Tuesday or Wednesday to call the agent to give them feedback or ask simple questions or little fact-finding questions. It may be the house for them, but they want to know about the age of the air conditioning unit or some subtle question to get the other agent to talk.
Yeah, and that brings us to number 7. When making that phone call, what I found to be really funny is whenever they are desperate, they basically will tell you their life story. So my kind of strategy is always get on the call, kind of start the conversation, again, on that Tuesday or Wednesday, giving them a few days. And then by that time, they're desperate and they just want to tell you everything. So stay quiet, ask a few questions to prompt it, and then just let them run and let those big fat pauses continue until they get more nervous, and then they just keep going. And I've had that work out several times where they just tell you things that you wouldn't imagine a seller's agent would tell you, but there they go.
That's correct. Now, here's kind of a fun thing I learned. It was probably 1996, 97. I met this really interesting young person who had just graduated from West Point and then came out of West Point, went to Dartmouth and had an MBA and was joining a consulting company in Las Colinas. And he made 3 offers on 3 different houses to purchase on the same day. It was a business transaction in his mind. He was going to make reasonable but lower offers on 3 different properties, and whichever one bit the hardest was the one he was going to negotiate with first, and he wanted to whittle it down to the lowest number possible. So never be afraid to make multiple offers on multiple houses at the same time. There's really not any risk in that. If all 3 were accepted, there's still options in the contract to back out. So you're not going to ever be stuck with buying 3 houses. The real trick is to get the very best value by finding which of those 3 will negotiate with you the greatest.
Yeah, and that brings us to number 9. So looking at their equity, housing prices have gone up so much that a lot of people have a lot of equity at this point. Obviously not those that bought last summer, but those that have bought especially pre-COVID. And so they have this large chunk of equity, and now their house isn't selling. And I think if you look at kind of what they bought it for versus what they have now, you can kind of see how much extra wiggle room there might be. If they bought it for $300 and now it's at $400, that $390 seems so much less of an impact to them as the seller because they still made $90,000 in a few years, where that 10 extra for you, whether it's closing costs or the sales price, can really make a big difference. So I think if there's some cushion there in terms of the equity on the seller side, you can actually be more aggressive, because for them it's just a paper gain that they never had, and they've had so much of it in such a short period of time because we know prices have gone up so much that they're probably more willing to discuss.
I agree. And that brings to number 10, which this idea you can use whether you're looking for a deal or you just want to make the right decision on purchasing a house. It's do the homework. Look hard at the comparable sales and really study the value of the home. And this is what I like to do. Because I have this question to me all the time: how much should we negotiate down? How much should they come down? Should they come down 2%, 5%? How much should they come down? I get this question over and over again, and I say, throw it all out the window. Let's pretend we don't know the price of the house and start from scratch. Let's develop what we really think the house is going to sell for, or what the market value is, or what the appraisal value is. We create the value from our perspective. And what's really interesting about this process as a buyer, if you've seen 10 or 15 houses, you've seen 10 or 15 more houses than the seller has. He's making a decision based on comparables and sometimes wishful thinking. And he may not really grasp the market like the buyer who's just walked through house after house after house after house and seen the competition. So start from the very scratch and determine your own price, then back up a little bit. And then let's negotiate to a price that we've established, and let's determine the price. Let's take charge of the value process and not let the other agent and the other owner determine what we're paying for the house.
Yeah, and that's going to include a walkaway price for the buyer, right?
That's correct. We set a goal, and if we don't reach the goal, we walk away.
You have that on top of having several offers out there. Maybe you have several under contract at the same time. That just gives you so much leverage. All you got to do is be ready to walk away from the houses. And I think people get a little scared about that. I don't know how your experience has been, but I think buyers get scared to walk away. But I'm always ready to as a buyer, because I want that leverage and I want the ability to negotiate hard for the price that I want, my goal. But at the same time, I know, like in Alliance, there's always going to be more houses coming up, probably of the same exact type in the same exact neighborhood, like the same floor plan and everything. So if you have the time and you plan this out correctly, you can really gain some negotiating advantage.
And keep in mind, we're talking about scenarios where there are large subdivisions with tract homes, and they're all very similar, and they're all very easy to determine the value. Plus, since there's thousands upon thousands of tract homes on the outskirts of the metroplex, there's always another one coming up for sale. Where if you were in the inner city, like maybe in Las Colinas or Grapevine or Highland Park, and you've got a 50-year-old home that's completely unique. It's unlike any other home you'll see for the next 6 months. That is a whole different approach, and you might have to pay closer to full retail or above list price to purchase that home. But to make a long story short, if you're looking for a deal on the outskirts of town and you're patient and you're diligent and you let us take care of the deal, we'll get a better value.
Yeah, so if you're using these 10 steps or 10 action items and you're going through the process, you're really going to outperform everyone in the market too. That's why I've been reluctant to give this information at all, because I don't want agents to watch this and then basically steal our game plan. Not to brag about it, but think of how process driven this is and how much critical thinking goes into our process. And then think of some of the realtors that you know or that you've used and think about what they've done. Did they just open the door and tell you how pretty the cabinets were, or did they actually go through this to really grab you a deal? And I think that's something that sets us apart. So with all that said, Doug, can you run us through the numbers for this week?
Yeah, well, just a quick overview. The Grapevine, Colleyville, Keller, Southlake market, it's the actual number of listings went down by 5 units. There's 339 listings this week. In the Alliance area, there's 411 total listings in the marketplace. That's going up. That's 18 new listings. So based on what we've been talking about, the outskirts, the listing inventory is getting bigger and bigger, and the inner city marketplace is getting smaller and smaller. Highland Village, Capel, Flower Mound, same thing. They added 14 to their total list total. 232 is the number, and that's 14 higher than last week. Go back to Plano and Frisco, it's actually shrinking. It's down 6 units from 682.
Yeah, so as our total units rise, that really gives you a better opportunity to really make a deal.
That's our ideas on how to find a really good deal in this marketplace, especially on the outskirts of town. Next week, we're going to talk about 5 things you really need to do before you get ready to make your first offer.
Yeah, so thanks for watching. Again, I was reluctant to provide that, but I hope it provided some value. But to see the real process in motion, give us a call. We're the Rogers team. We're happy to help you out. Thanks for watching.